Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. In a world where magic reigned supreme, humanity had long been shackled by the fearsome power of beings far beyond their understanding. Magic towers dotted the landscape, each one a bastion of power for the mages and creatures who ruled the territories. These towers stood tall, imposing, and seemingly indestructible, their very presence a constant reminder of the dominance of magic over the lives of ordinary people. For generations, humans had lived under the shadow of these towers, submitting to the will of their magical overlords, offering tributes to avoid their wrath. Among these overlords, the Dragon King was the most feared. A being of immense power, his reign stretched across vast lands, his influence felt in every corner of the world. The Dragon King's minions, creatures born of dark magic, terrorized villages, demanding offerings of gold, food, and even human lives to appease their master's insatiable hunger for control. The villagers had learned long ago that resistance was futile, for to challenge the Dragon King was to invite certain death, but in one small, unremarkable village, there lived a young man who refused to accept this fate. His name was Karn, and unlike most of his peers, Karn had never shown any aptitude for magic. While others sought to learn the arcane arts to protect themselves or to gain favor with the magical overlords, Karn had dedicated himself to the sword. He had spent his entire life mastering every technique, every form, until his body moved with the precision and grace of a seasoned warrior. Yet, despite his skill, he was an outcast, ridiculed for his lack of magical ability. "Why waste your time with that sword, Karn?" the villagers would say. "Without magic, you'll never stand a chance against the creatures of this world." But Karn remained undeterred. His resolve was unshakable, his will as sharp as the blade he wielded. He believed in the strength of the human spirit, in the power that lay within each person, a power that transcended magic. It was this belief that drove him, that pushed him to train harder, to fight against the odds, to prove that humans were not as weak as they were made out to be. One fateful day, the Dragon King's minions descended upon Karn's village. The sky darkened as they approached, their ominous silhouettes casting long shadows over the land. The villagers cowered in fear, knowing that their only hope for survival lay in submitting to the demands of these creatures. But when Karn saw his childhood friend, a young woman named Alara, taken as tribute, something inside him snapped. The pain in her eyes, the helplessness on her face, ignited a fire in his heart that could not be extinguished. As the minions dragged Alara away, Karn made a vow to free her, to free all of humanity from the tyranny of the Dragon King. His declaration was met with disbelief. The village elders warned him of the futility of his quest, of the insurmountable power of the Dragon King. But Karn would not be swayed. He knew the path he had to walk, and no one could deter him from it. With nothing but his sword and the clothes on his back, Karn set out on his journey. The road ahead was long and perilous, filled with dangers that would test his resolve at every turn. As he ventured into the world, he encountered creatures born of magic, beings who saw him as nothing more than an insignificant human, an easy target. But Karn was far from ordinary. His mastery of the sword allowed him to stand his ground, to cut through the magical defenses of his enemies with sheer force of will. It wasn't long before word of the lone swordsman spread. Stories of a man without magic, who could defeat creatures of unimaginable power, began to circulate. These tales reached the ears of many, including those who had long suffered under the rule of magical beings. Some were inspired by Karn's defiance, while others were skeptical, dismissing the stories as mere fantasy. But there were those who saw potential in Karn, who believed that perhaps, just perhaps, he could succeed where so many others had failed. As Karn continued on his journey, he crossed paths with a disillusioned mage named Lysandra. Once a powerful sorceress, Lysandra had grown weary of the endless cycle of oppression and violence that defined their world. She had seen firsthand the corruption that magic could bring, how it twisted the hearts of those who wielded it. When she heard of Karn, she was intrigued, for he represented something she had long thought lost, the strength of the human spirit. "You're different from the others," Lysandra said when they first met. "You don't rely on magic, yet you stand against it. Why?" Karn regarded her with steely eyes. "Magic has its place, but it's not the only power in this world. There's something within all of us, something stronger than any spell or incantation. I fight for that." Lysandra was moved by his words. She decided to join him, offering her knowledge and skills, not as a mage, but as an ally who understood the dangers they faced. Together, they made their way toward the Dragon King's territory, gathering strength and allies as they went. Among these was a rogue named Merrick, a man with a past shrouded in mystery, who had his own reasons for wanting to see the Dragon King fall. Merrick was a master of stealth and deception, skills that complemented Karn's direct approach. The trio faced many trials as they journeyed deeper into the Dragon King's domain. The land itself seemed to resist their passage, with each step forward met with greater resistance. Magical traps and monstrous creatures blocked their path, but Karn's determination never wavered. Every battle was a test, every victory a step closer to their goal. But with each victory, the stakes grew higher, and the challenges more daunting. As they approached the Dragon King's fortress, a towering structure of dark stone and seething magic, the air grew thick with malevolent energy. The fortress was surrounded by a desolate wasteland, a place where the very essence of life had been drained away by the Dragon King's presence. Karn could feel the weight of the magic pressing down on him, trying to crush his spirit, but he pushed forward, driven by the memory of Alara and the countless others who had suffered under the Dragon King's rule. The final approach to the fortress was the most treacherous. The Dragon King had anticipated their arrival, and his minions were ready. The battle that ensued was fierce and unrelenting. Karn, Lysandra, and Merrick fought with everything they had, their combined strength barely enough to hold back the tide of enemies. Lysandra's magic shielded them from the worst of the Dragon King's attacks, while Marrek's cunning kept them one step ahead of their foes. But it was Karn who bore the brunt of the fight, his sword flashing with deadly precision as he cut down enemy after enemy. Finally, they reached the gates of the fortress. But as they stood before the massive, enchanted doors, they were confronted by the Dragon King's most loyal servant, a fearsome creature known as the Shadow Wyrm. The Wyrm was a creature of pure darkness, its body coiled with dark magic, its eyes burning with malevolent intent. The battle with the Shadow Wyrm was unlike anything Karn had faced before. The creature's speed and power were overwhelming, and its magic seemed impervious to Lysandra's spells. Karn knew that this was the final test, the ultimate challenge that would determine whether they could reach the Dragon King. Drawing upon every ounce of his strength, Karn fought with a ferocity that even the Shadow Wyrm could not withstand. His sword, forged with the essence of his will and determination, began to glow with a light that pierced through the darkness. With a mighty swing, Karn struck the Wyrm down, shattering its body into 1,000 fragments of shadow. The gates of the fortress opened, and Karn, Lysandra, and Merrick stepped inside. The interior of the fortress was a labyrinth of dark corridors and chambers, each one filled with traps and dangers designed to protect the Dragon King. But Karn pressed on, his focus unwavering. He could feel the presence of the Dragon King growing stronger, a palpable force that seemed to pulse through the very walls of the fortress. Finally, they reached the heart of the fortress, a vast chamber filled with a swirling vortex of magical energy. At the center of the chamber stood the Dragon King, his massive form towering over them. His scales glistened with a dark, otherworldly light, and his eyes burned with the fire of ancient magic. "So, you've come to challenge me, little human," the Dragon King rumbled, his voice shaking the very ground beneath them. "You, who have no magic, who is nothing more than a speck of dust in my domain. What makes you think you can defeat me?" Karn stepped forward, his sword at the ready. "It's not about magic," he said, his voice steady. "It's about the strength of the human spirit. You've ruled through fear and power, but that's not true strength. True strength comes from within, from the will to fight for what's right, no matter the odds." The Dragon King laughed, a deep, resonant sound that echoed through the chamber. "You are a fool, human. But I will enjoy crushing you all the same." The battle that followed was a clash of titanic forces, a struggle between the raw power of magic and the indomitable will of a single human. The Dragon King unleashed wave after wave of magical attacks, each one more powerful than the last. But Karn, fueled by the strength of his conviction, fought back with everything he had. His sword, now glowing with a brilliant light, became an extension of his will, cutting through the Dragon King's magic with every strike. Lysandra and Merrick provided support where they could, but it was clear that this battle was Karn's alone. The Dragon King's power was immense, and his attacks were relentless, but Karn refused to give in. With each clash, he grew stronger, his determination fueling his every move. The chamber shook with the force of their battle, the very air crackling with energy. Finally, as the Dragon King prepared to unleash a final, devastating attack, Karn saw his opportunity. With a burst of speed, he closed the distance between them and drove his sword deep into the Dragon King's chest. The blade, glowing with the light of Karn's will, pierced through the Dragon King's scales and into his heart. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The Dragon King let out a roar of pain and fury, his massive body shuddering as the light from Karn's sword spread through him. The vortex of magical energy in the chamber began to collapse, the power that had sustained the Dragon King for so long unraveling in an instant. With one final, mighty effort, Karn drove his sword deeper, channeling all his strength into the blow. The light within the Dragon King grew brighter and brighter until, with a blinding flash, the Dragon King exploded into a burst of energy that shook the entire fortress. The walls cracked and crumbled, the dark magic that had held the fortress together dissipating into nothingness. When the light finally faded, Karn stood alone in the rubble of the chamber, his sword still clutched in his hand. The Dragon King was gone, defeated by the strength of a single human. Lysandra and Merrick, battered but alive, emerged from the wreckage to find Karn standing victorious. "You did it," Lysandra said, her voice filled with awe. "You actually did it." Karn nodded, but there was no triumph in his expression, only a deep, abiding weariness. "It's over," he said quietly. "The Dragon King is gone." The three of them made their way out of the collapsing fortress, emerging into the light of a new dawn. The sky was clear, the air fresh, and the land that had once been blighted by the Dragon King's presence was beginning to heal. The magical towers that had once loomed over the land were crumbling, their power fading with the fall of the Dragon King. As they returned to the village, they were met with cheers and celebrations. Karn was hailed as a hero, the man who had defeated the Dragon King and freed humanity from its magical oppressors. But Karn had no interest in glory or fame. He had done what he set out to do, and now his only desire was to help his people rebuild, to create a world where humans could live free from fear. In the days and weeks that followed, the world began to change. With the fall of the Dragon King, the balance of power shifted. The magical creatures that had once ruled over humanity found themselves facing a new reality, one where humans were no longer willing to be subjugated. The spirit of humanity, the strength that had allowed Karn to triumph, became a beacon of hope for all those who had suffered under the rule of magic. Karn's victory became a legend, a story told around campfires and in the halls of the newly freed cities. It inspired others to believe in their own strength, to rise up against oppression, and to fight for a world where all beings could live in harmony. The magical creatures, once rulers, now learned to coexist with humans as equals, their dominance broken by the unyielding spirit of a single man. As for Karn, he found peace in the simple life of a village blacksmith, content to live out his days in quiet obscurity. He had proven what he needed to prove, not just to the world, but to himself. He had shown that true strength lies not in magic or power, but in the will to fight for what is right, no matter the odds, and so, the world moved forward, forever changed by the actions of one man. A man who, despite lacking magic, had the strength to stand against the greatest power in the world and emerge victorious. The legend of Karn, the unyielding swordsman, would live on for generations, a testament to the power of the human spirit.